Okay, so you know all that fascinating stuff we've been looking at, the things you sent over about like deeper connections and understanding, kind of beyond what we usually experience.
Yeah.
So like it makes you think maybe there's this whole subtle level of reality that we're just not tuned into.
Right.
Makes you wonder if there's a way to unlock it. Like
Yeah.
step into some kind of universal listening room.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And the transcript you shared from that YouTube channel, Tarshian Kesel Glub, with Dr. Mustafa Mahmood,
Yes,
it really dives into that.
it does.
This idea of heightened perception and also the noise within us that keeps us from it.
That blocks us, yeah.
And it's full of these really profound, like, spiritual and philosophical concepts.
Yeah,
It's the kind of stuff that can give you some serious aha moments.
For sure.
But it is pretty dense, you know?
It is.
So what we want to do here is try to pull out the core of what Dr. Mahmood is saying.
Okay.
Make these really kind of profound ideas clear and easy to grasp. So we're aiming to give you a solid understanding of this perspective on inner awareness and potential connection without you having to like spend hours with the original transcript.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so one of the most striking images he uses is this concept of God having a listening room
Okay.
and holding the switch to absolutely everything.
Wow.
What do you think that analogy is really telling us?
I think what's so interesting about that is the sense of complete interconnectedness that it suggests, you know, by portraying God as having this listening room and the master switch.
Right.
He's essentially saying that everything exists within the realm of divine awareness and control.
Right.
So being with God, achieving a state of closeness,
Yeah.
could potentially grant you access to this universal awareness, you know,
Right,
you hear everything because you're connected to the ultimate source of all things.
It's almost like tuning into the main frequency.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then building on that, he talks about the world being in a constant state of whispers.
Right.
These really subtle communications happening all around us that we usually just don't pick up on.
We just miss them. Yeah.
He even uses the analogy of dreams as conversations
Oh, wow.
and hints at this potential for connection between the living and those who have passed through this thin thread of sleep.
Interesting.
It really paints this vivid picture of a reality that's just brimming with these unseen interactions.
I see.
So if God has this universal listening room,
Right.
then these whispers that Dr. Mahmood is talking about could be like these subtle signals emanating from that source,
Right.
constantly present, but we just don't hear them.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, what Dr. Mahmood is proposing here is that what we experience as reality, you know, through our five senses, is just one layer.
Right.
And there's this deeper, more constant exchange and communication occurring all the time. Wow.
And the dream analogy is particularly insightful
It is.
because it suggests that when our minds' usual filters are down, we become more open to these subtle whispers.
Yeah.
It really blurs the lines between different states of consciousness
Right.
and even different realms of existence, you know?
But if these whispers are always happening, why aren't we hearing them?
Yeah, why?
This brings us to a really central idea in the transcript.
Okay.
This barrier of internal noise.
Yes.
Dr. Mahmood argues that this is the main thing
Okay.
that stops us from perceiving these subtle communications.
Right.
And when he describes this noise, it is all-encompassing.
It is, yeah.
Our everyday worries, our
Yeah.
desires, our ambitions, even our joys and losses.
Interesting.
It's like our minds are constantly chattering away,
Yeah.
completely drowning everything else out.
Blocking it out.
It's so true. You know, like I was trying to focus on this report yesterday, and all I could think about was whether I had remembered to pay that bill. Oh, I see.
That's exactly the kind of noise he's talking about, right?
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is the sheer scope of what constitutes this internal noise. You know, he lists not just like negative emotions or anxieties,
Right.
but the entire spectrum of our ego-driven thoughts and concerns.
Wow.
It's this constant self-referential thinking that keeps us locked inside our own subjective experience.
Right.
It prevents us from tuning into a potentially broader, more objective reality.
I see.
So this noise, he suggests, effectively isolates us from those subtle whispers.
So the first step to better listening, according to Dr. Mahmood, is silencing this internal cacophony.
Right.
But he really doesn't present this as some easy task.
No, not at all.
He describes it as a real struggle,
Yeah.
even a jihad.
Oh, wow.
Against our own ego and desires.
Right. Against ourselves, basically.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly difficult.
It is presented as a monumental challenge.
Yeah.
He emphasizes how deeply ingrained our ego and desires are.
Right.
To truly quiet this inner noise requires a sustained and intense effort. A conscious battle to move beyond that self-centeredness that dominates our daily thoughts. Right. It's about shifting our focus away from our immediate concerns and the constant fluctuations of our emotions,
But he even puts a number on how rare it might be to truly reach this state.
Yeah.
Suggesting maybe only 1 in 100 million can really overcome their internal noise.
Wow, that's a tiny fraction.
Yeah. He even quotes Prophet David saying, leave yourself and come to me, and uses this really powerful metaphor of having to cross a sea of flames.
Wow.
So that really emphasizes the immense difficulty involved.
Yeah.
But if it's so incredibly rare, what practical value does this concept have for like you or me in our daily lives?
Yeah.
Is it more of an aspirational ideal than something we can actually apply?
That's a crucial question. While reaching that ultimate state of transcendence might be incredibly rare, the underlying principle of reducing internal noise to achieve better focus is something that you can actively apply, when you're trying to learn something new or understand a complex situation.
Yeah.
Think of it like trying to listen to someone in a crowded room.
Right.
The less internal chatter you have, the better you can focus on the information coming in.
That makes perfect sense, like a kind of mental decluttering.
Exactly.
And then the transcript brings up a really important point.
Okay.
Achieving this isn't just about our own individual effort.
Right.
Dr. Mahmood states that it ultimately requires divine assistance.
Interesting.
Granted to those who are loved, qualified, transparent, have good intentions, and are dedicated to worship.
Yeah.
So it's like this combination of our own striving and some form of grace, it seems.
Exactly.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, the element of divine assistance introduces a dimension beyond just willpower.
Right.
It suggests a reciprocal relationship where sincere effort and purity of intention create a state of receptivity for a higher power to intervene.
I see.
The qualities listed,
Yeah.
being loved, qualified, transparent, having good intentions, and dedication to worship, they paint a picture of a soul that is actively aligning itself with a higher purpose.
Okay. And then he circles back to this idea of universal connection.
Yeah.
Mentioning a film that illustrated the possibility of communication between all parts of the universe.
Interesting.
Really reinforces this sense that we're all part of this larger interconnected web.
I see, yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Well, this analogy helps to make the abstract idea of universal communication more concrete.
Okay.
It suggests that the universe isn't just a collection of separate things, but a unified whole where information and perhaps even consciousness can flow freely.
Wow.
And, this interconnectedness is a recurring theme in many spiritual and philosophical traditions.
And one of the signs of someone who has achieved this heightened perception, oguv, or knower, is this ability to find intimacy with everything. Trees, ants, insects, even wild animals.
Wow.
It's this profound sense of unity that allows them to connect with all of creation.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's this beautiful idea of universal kinship.
Yeah. What do you make of that?
Well, I think this intimacy is a key sign of a fundamental shift in perception.
Right.
It signifies a breaking down of these artificial barriers we often create between ourselves and the rest of the natural world.
Right.
The Osho or knower, having moved beyond their ego, recognizes the underlying unity that connects all beings.
Yeah.
And this recognition fosters a deep sense of connection and understanding.
Right. With everything.
With everything. And then there's this anecdote about the Unsho who was sick.
Oh, wow.
And lying on grass.
Okay.
And supposedly heard the grass telling him to eat it to heal.
What?
And he did and was cured.
Wow.
And Dr. Mahmood presents this as potentially metaphorical.
Okay.
Yasbi Ashimiya, gentle emotions, or inspirational usue.
Right.
But also hinting at this deeper interconnectedness.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well, this anecdote is definitely open to interpretation, as Dr. Mahmood suggests, whether it's a literal account of communication or a metaphorical representation of an intuitive insight or a moment of profound connection with nature.
Right.
It serves to illustrate the potential for knowledge and healing to arise from unexpected places.
Wow.
When one is in a state of heightened receptivity,
it
points to the possibility of a deeper dialogue with the world around us.
Right.
Beyond our usual ways of perceiving things.
So whether literal or metaphorical, the key takeaway here is this idea that heightened receptivity can unlock these unexpected sources of insight or understanding, even from the natural world around us. And then he introduces this concept of the sine-quation skier, or the merciful breath flowing through the universe.
Interesting.
Implying this constant communication and life force present everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like the universe is constantly exhaling a message of life and connection.
I like that. What do you think about that?
Well, the sine-quation skier is this powerful concept that suggests a fundamental animating principle underlying all of existence.
Right.
It implies this continuous flow of divine energy and communication that permeates everything.
Right. Everything.
And this idea really reinforces the notion that the universe isn't static or inert, but a dynamic and communicative entity.
I see.
And this brings us back to the idea of inner purity. The transcript reiterates that the more a person's soul is purified and draws closer to God, the more receptive they become to these divine inspirations and knowledge, potentially leading to this ability to hear what is not heard.
Wow.
And see what is not seen.
That's amazing.
It's like cleaning a window to get a much clearer view.
Exactly. Precisely.
Yeah.
Inner purity in this context acts like a filter.
Right.
By removing the noise of ego and worldly attachments, the soul becomes a clearer channel for divine insights.
Okay.
And this purification process is seen as absolutely essential for unlocking these higher levels of perception and understanding.
This process of purification is further elaborated through the concepts of AA and Ate.
Okay.
It is described as emptying the heart of desires, whims, ambitions, bad intentions, and heedless thoughts, like a real clearing out of all that mental and emotional clutter.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You think like,
well, ages is the crucial first step in this transformative process. It involves a conscious and deliberate effort to detach from those ego-driven desires and negative tendencies that cloud our inner vision. It's about creating a void, a space that's free from distractions. And impurities.
And then comes age, which is about filling the heart with the remembrance of God and constantly being with him. It's about actively cultivating a connection with the divine. After creating that empty space.
Exactly.
So it's not enough to just empty the heart.
No.
It needs to be filled with something of a higher order.
Right. And what do you think about that?
Well, the remembrance of God. And constant awareness of the divine presence are seen as the means to elevate the soul and make it receptive to divine knowledge and inspiration. So it all comes full circle. Back to that listening room analogy. After this process of purification and drawing closer to the divine, the individual becomes qualified to hear and perceive beyond the ordinary senses.
That's powerful.
It's like finally gaining access to that cosmic switchboard we talked about right at the beginning.
Exactly.
What do you think about that?
Well, the listening room becomes accessible not just through force or intellectual understanding alone, but through a fundamental transformation of the inner self. By quieting the internal noise and actively cultivating a connection with the divine. One becomes attuned to those subtle whispers and the deeper realities of the universe.
So just to recap,
we've
taken a deep dive into Dr. Mahmood's concept of a universal listening room.
Yes.
The very significant barrier of our internal noise, this very challenging but apparently necessary path to inner silence. The idea that heightened perception involves both our own efforts and divine assistance.
That's right.
And this really beautiful notion of our deep interconnectedness with all things.
And if we bring this back to your initial interest in gaining knowledge quickly but thoroughly, you can see how these concepts offer a really unique perspective. It suggests that true understanding might involve not just intense intellectual processing, but also a process of quieting the self to allow for deeper insights to emerge. Almost like tuning a sensitive instrument.
Absolutely. It really makes you wonder, could all this constant noise in our daily lives be preventing us from perceiving this much deeper level of reality that's constantly around us?
Wow.
And if that's the case, what small step could you take today towards finding just a moment of greater inner quiet?
That's a great question.
It's definitely something powerful to consider.
Definitely.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
My pleasure.
It's been great.
Absolutely. Thank you.